45M left the Liffey, nosed into the canal and sailed into nostalgia, an evocation of the old trading days more than 30 years after they ended, with a genuine cargo of bricks and beer. We crossed the Midlands and were approaching the Great River. But first, the canal terminus of Shannon Harbour. That hotel for the passengers of the flyboats is now a rather grim ruin, but it fails to cast a shadow over the brightly painted boats and the lively community of boat people. Boats are such individual things, each different, each interesting. I have to stop here for a while and indulge a passion for wandering around and considering other people's craft.
I have been working for nearly 2 years on this particular boat. I've used all my holidays for the last 2 years in restoring the interior of it, and I'm nearly ready for sea trials now, and I'm just doing a bit of outside painting and touching it up. I don't know of anything that gives me more relaxation. I really enjoy getting out, getting away on a Friday evening, getting down here, the journey down, getting everything together, going home, the dog, the cat, somebody to look after the cat. We bring the dog with us and get down here. Even the dog relaxes when she gets here.
But we can't afford to relax for too long. The journey from here on poses other considerations, other dangers. The deck cargo must be lashed down in preparation for the big river and the treacheries of Loch Derg. I weave cat's cradles of rope and try not to let my imagination escape. Rope. Rope is woven through the whole history of the waterway. It's left its fossil footprint in the hard limestone of every bridge. To arrivals. I like to say goodbye to places. I'm becoming dependent on the drug of travel, only really content when we're drifting on. Though most of the time it feels as though we're stationary and it's the rest of the world that's reeling past at a couple of miles an hour. I think Dick Carney and Declan feel it too. I detect impatience when we're delayed by something, contentment when the boat's heartbeat gets up to 300 RPM and there's a little ripple at her stem. Some people were not meant to stay at home. Lock 36, the last lock on the Grand Canal, the last step down to the Shannon. It opens a new chapter in the Book of Evidence. We're just over 70 miles from our starting point in the Liffey, the best part of a week underway. There are new challenges up ahead, a different type of navigation, a different sort of problem. It frees a rush of excitement and anticipation. Already we're picking up speed as the waterway widens out. There is a growing momentum, a rush. The excitement is blended with a little anxiety. I think of other river voyages. The last voyage of the dying Simon Bolivar down the Rio Magdalena. The river had grown more vast and solemn, like a swamp with no beginning or end. Or Mark Twain sounding the muddy delta of the Mississippi, and the hard and glittering eye of Conrad's Marlowe haunting us all. The long stretches of the waterway ran on deserted into the gloom of overshadowed distances. Travelling by river is hazardous to the soul, even when you know that this is a callow, not a jungle, a water meadow concealing creatures that are rare but not exotic.
The Shannon Callow is the flooded area along the river. It's underwater for maybe up to 7 months of the year, and because of that it's very rich botanically. Some of this area would never have been reseeded and very little fertiliser would be applied to it. It's important for the corncrake in that the hay is cut later on the callows, and the type of vegetation here is not suitable for silage making, so therefore the corncrake gets a chance to rear at least one brood and sometimes 2 broods of chicks. On a world scale, it's globally endangered, and it's the only Irish bird to be globally endangered. It chooses these callows because they're abundant in insects which it needs to feed on. As it nests, it maybe is bringing out its clutch in June when the hay is cut. So therefore the nests are destroyed, and if the chicks are out, they can also be caught up in the moors and get killed. I like to think that it's going to be saved, and I like to think that in 10 years we're going to have corncrakes here in this area.
Never mind the weather, so long as we're together, we're off to see the Wild West show. And this is bloody August. Oh, very macho, man against the elements. But if I were a corncrake, I'd stay in Africa. On the water, you drive on the right, not the left. It takes a little getting used to. The river seems crowded after the canal, though in fact there are less than 1,500 boats on it. It's also very cosmopolitan. You hear every language of the sea. The tower was built to deter Napoleon from invading. He seems to have arrived nearly 2 centuries late.
The river is 160 miles long, and you have big lakes and very well diversified water. If we were to have as dense a population of boats on the Shannon, say as they have in the Broads in Britain, there would be about 22,000 cruisers on the Shannon. We'd expect about 30,000 visitors this year, staying for a week or a fortnight. About a quarter of those would be Irish. After that, about 40% German. They're very much the biggest number of people on the river. Then Swiss, Austrian, French, Belgian, Dutch, and not so many English and not so many Americans. It's not very typical of the normal tourist mix in Ireland. The Shannon itself is very well managed by the Office of Public Works. They're building a lot of new moorings, jetties there, and there's a wonderful development about to happen over the next year or two when the Shannon and the Erne are going to be linked together. So you could get from Killaloo to Ballyshannon.
Well, my first experience in the Shannon was some over 20 years ago at the start of Emerald Star, and I hired from them on that occasion and liked what was happening, and I've been with them ever since. Many of the hire people will make sure that before you're given the boat that you will be capable of handling the boat. But having been given the boat, you still have the period. You may experience a wee bit of anxiety, but it soon vanishes.
First of the Shannon shiplocks drags my mind back to history. This was the last lock 45M went through before the tragedy. She then spent 30 years in darkness on the lake bottom before she was salvaged. Images of the past, the unknowing men who sailed through danger as a way of life. The Waterway claimed many of them. The lock has a keeper, and he keeps a record. 45M lost on Loch Derg with 3 men, 1 survivor, on December the 3rd, 1946.